Now, after his election as the next US president last week, Donald Trump no doubt has a long list of international leaders to meet in the coming weeks and months. But his first appointment with a British politician wasn't the Prime Minister Theresa May, but UKIP's former leader Nigel Farage.
Yes, the pair met at the weekend after Mr Farage supported Mr Trump's bid for the White House, and the new president-elect cited the Brexit vote as an inspiration during his campaign. Well, let's speak to Nigel Farage now, who joins us from Westminster. Morning to you. Thanks very much for joining us. Oh, I said appointment. Was it an appointment, or was it like a by-chance meeting?
Well, no, I mean, I'd gone to New York to meet his team. I mean, I know his team. I've known some of them for several years, so we were going there to say well done and have a little bit of a celebration with them. I didn't really think, to be honest, that Donald Trump would have time to meet me, given that he's busy putting his cabinet together. But he did. He wanted to, and he did. And we talked about the campaign, and I congratulated him. But importantly, we talked a bit about the relationship between this country and his.
What did he tell you?
Well, it's interesting because the Obama years saw quite a big change in our relationship. You know, day one, the bust of Winston Churchill was moved out of the presidential Oval Office. And we saw, of course, during the referendum, the American president really rather looking down his nose at us and really not thinking that we were a particularly important country. Trump is the opposite. His mother was Scottish. He feels a strong link and association with this country. And I think we've got an opportunity here for a very positive way forward.
OK, so as far as you can see it, is this the start, do you think, of a sort of new special relationship? Is that what the messages you were getting from him?
I think a new relationship, yes. And I think, you know, there are several members of his team who've said that if any country was to be at the front of the queue, it would be the United Kingdom. So I think that's very important. And I think if we start to move in that direction, you know, of heading towards a trade deal with the USA, that's good not just for British business, but it also strengthens our negotiating hand in Brussels. So this stuff really does matter. OK,
and do you see yourself as being part of that whole setup?
Well, I don't know. That's not really up to me. That's up to Downing Street. That's up to the UK government. All I've said is I have got connections to Donald Trump. I've got long-standing connections to some of his team. And if I can be helpful in any way at all, I'd be happy to do so.
We heard from Chris Grayling, Transport Secretary, here on Breakfast, and I'll quote, you may not have time to see the interview, what he said to us. He said, we have government-to-government relations. We have a team of people on the ground in Washington who've already made ties with members of the Trump's transition team. We also have members of the government and cabinet who have very good relationships with senior Republicans in Washington. Do you feel a sense of rejection?
Well, he's wrong, isn't he? Because actually, if we're really being honest about it, many members of the UK government were very rude about Mr Trump, very rude about his campaign over the course of the last few months. Look, if that's what they want to do, fine. But I'll tell you something, if we were a company dealing in the real world and we said, hey, this Trump guy, America, these potentially are very important customers for us, what would you do? Well, you would obviously use the services of somebody who had direct connections. If they choose not to do that, then it sort of says an awful lot, I think, about the fact that our government and our political class are just not living in the real world.
It's interesting what you said there, because you said it's up to government, but then that you might be the person placed to do it. Is it a formal role you would want?
No, it doesn't have to be at all. Look, all I've said is I'd like to be, I'd like to help. I thought it was an offer. I don't want anything. I'm not asking for anything other than to say that I think I can help. And for some reason, our career politicians here and their apparatchiks seem to want to reject me. I think it says a lot about politics in this country.
Tell us a bit, if you would, because the picture, and you'll know the picture I'm referring to, was on so many of the front pages. Where was it? How did it come about?
That was inside Mr Trump's apartment, which is up at the top of the Trump Tower. And we'd had a meeting for about 50 minutes. We talked about lots of things, and I was just about to leave, and we took that picture. And as you can see, we were both in very good spirits.
You talked about celebrating. How did he celebrate?
Well, I think, to be honest, his room for celebration has been limited, because although he's not inaugurated until January the 20th, you know, he is busy putting together his cabinet. And would you believe 4,000 jobs that need to be filled before he becomes the president officially. So I don't think he's had much time to celebrate.
OK, let's just quickly talk as well about, I understand you were there to meet your friend Steve Bannon, who is going to get, I think, one of those many jobs. Some concern about what he stands for. What can you tell us about him? Some people refer to him as a white supremacist, for example.
Do you know, if you stand up and take on the political elites across the Western world, and I know more about this than anybody, if you take them on, if you fight for nation-state democracy, if you believe in border controls and proper immigration policies, you are automatically labelled with every nasty term they can possibly think up. I've known Mr. Bannon for several years. I've never heard him say anything at all, that remotely would suggest these headlines have any truth in them.
Nigel Farage, thanks very much for your time here on Breakfast. Thank you.